Okay, it is 7:04, April 12th, or 7:05, April 12th, 2022. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting law as allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first order of business is open session, public comments and announcements. Please note that public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. So one second. I know that the Homeless Prevention Council had one. Are they on?
Brian, this is Jay Coburn from the CEO, and I'm here on behalf of the CDP and homeless prevention.
Okay. Rebecca, there's a slide. Give it a second here.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, do you have it? Or did you want me to? All right. 1 second, I'll pull it up. Oh. Okay, sure. And yeah, okay, screen two. All right, Jay.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jay Coburn. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Development Partnership. And unfortunately, my colleague, Hadley Luddy from the Homeless Prevention Council wasn't able to join us tonight. But we wanted to share with the Select Board and town officials, as well as the members of the public, announcement of the creation of a Lower Cape Housing and Accessory Dwelling Unit Resource Center. Thanks to $1 million in ARPA funds that have been secured by our state representative, Sarah Peak, our two organizations have joined together to address the Lower Cape's year-round housing crisis. And our plan is to do that through 4 different programs. The first is an accessory dwelling unit resource center that will offer financial incentives, technical assistance, and other resources to eligible homeowners to help them build accessory dwelling units, also known as in-law suites or basement apartments. We are also creating a housing stability fund so that residents who cannot receive support through other housing support and rental assistance programs can be aided to prevent becoming homeless. We also will be providing resident support services to landlords and their residents to help promote long-term rental success and other online resources and community training to help address the housing crisis. More information is available at lowercapehousing.org or through our respective organizations' websites. And appreciate the time to just announce this new project, and would be happy to come back at a later date, Mr. Chairman, if the Select Board would like to have a fuller, more detailed discussion and briefing. Thanks very much.
All right, well, thank you. It looks like a great program. So are there any others with announcements and public comments? Okay, so seeing none, moving on to our next order of business, which is the consent agenda. And Helen?
Yeah, so the first item, I, with permission from Charlie, contacted Hillary. So if we could just do that one and then do the rest on the consent, if other people agree to that, please.
Okay, are there any other objections to the consent agenda besides item A? Okay,
No.
so I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item A as drafted.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Brian, I.
Michael, aye.
Helen?
Helen, I.
And just to be clear, that included a number of licenses, the appointment of Ethan Esty, and the use of Mayo Beach for Walter Barron, the Gull Pond for the Herring River. Yes, okay. All right, Helen.
Yeah, so it seemed a bit odd to me that there was no comment from the conservation agent about the chairs, particularly at this time of year. So to answer the applicant's question, I got permission from Charlie, texted with Hillary, and no chairs at this time of year. So they can't use chairs. And I have a motion when you're ready that has that conventional phrase at the end.
I believe we're ready.
Okay, I move to grant the use of the Wellfleet Memorial Garden for a fee of $110. The area must be left in the condition in which it was found to the satisfaction of the DPW and the Health Conservation Department.
Okay, second.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I. And through you to the applicant, is the applicant here?
That's what I was looking for.
She's not. She sent a letter. It's in your packet.
Oh, yeah.
She had to work tonight.
Yeah, and just so, it's good that this was applied for and stuff, but that they understand they can't serve booze and,
I'll email her everything that you said tonight, tomorrow morning.
thank you. I didn't, the booze thing wasn't, serving alcohol, I'm sorry. Serving alcohol wasn't in the motion though. And sometimes people don't understand it's a separate thing from press hall. Thank you.
All right.
I've got a question
Yep. Go ahead, John.
related to licenses. I every year for the last 12 years, I've been issued a business license, for my boat. And it's never come before the board. And I noticed that Captain Curley's did. Is there something different about his license than mine, or is there something I'm doing wrong?
No, because I've taken over Jeannie Mac, I wasn't sure which one went in front of the select board. So I'm just beginning now to know which ones come before you and which ones don't. I do realize that now there are a couple in here that don't need to be before you. So I'll get the hang of that. So you're not doing anything wrong.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. That would be a bad look.
I'm glad you checked. All right, so to the third item on our agenda, which is open meeting law complaint filed on April 4th, 2022 by Judith Earn. Just to be clear, so to the members of the public and members of the board, certain standards of decorum must be met. And if anybody makes comments about anybody's person, they will be muted. So with that, Judith?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, you see my complaint. Perhaps you should read it or touch upon the points. In the past, the board hasn't encouraged a discussion like this, so I appreciate that. So haven't you discussed amongst yourself what the problem is here? It's obvious.
That would be an open meeting law violation if we discussed amongst ourselves what.
So why don't you do it now then? What I lay out there.
Okay, so Rebecca, can you play the video of our meeting where this violation is alleged to occur?
We're going to listen to the 4 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
that I have something else. And because of that, and because of the other obligations that I have to fulfill besides this job, which I love, I am not going to continue after this year. In other words, on May 2nd, we're going to have an annual election. And at that time, I will stop serving on the select board. Now, on March 11th, and the town clerk said I should announce this. So she didn't have to announce it, but she was going to announce that on March 11th, at the end of the day, is the last time that somebody can take out papers to run for select board. And last year we had a situation where, you know, we had a write-in candidate. We had two write-in candidates, John Wolf and Justina Carlson, and that worked. And that's all I have to say about this. But I'm going into my 23rd year serving the town on various boards and committees and so forth. And my 10th year, I'm finishing up my 10th year on the select board, and I love it. But the other stuff can't wait, and nobody else can do it. So I'm not going to be going on after the annual election on May 2nd. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be sad to see you go. So I know we're not really supposed to discuss things right now. No, if anybody who is civically inclined is watching, or will watch this later, I would encourage them to consider running for office as well. So thank you, Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.
You've got another month and a half of me. So
Yep. Charlie?
Thank you, Ryan. And I know we're not supposed to, but so if someone is interested, they'd have to go to the town clerk's office by Friday at 5 p.m. to take out papers. And then they would have to return those by Monday, the 14th by 5 p.m. So I just wanted to mention those details, and I know I'm violating your rules, but thank you, Helen. I've enjoyed working for you.
you still got a month and a half. Ryan?
Okay. Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so I take this kind of open meeting law complaint seriously. I went and listened to the recording, and it confirmed my memory, which is we had no discussion during an announcement period on the agenda. And it was essential to supply information, which also qualifies as an announcement, as to when the election was going to be. I can say here now that since then, Jennifer Conkle, who had never gone through this process before, and I hadn't either, I'd observed it from the outside a couple of times in 23 years, but I'd never had to do it myself. She contacted the elections division of the, Secretary of State. I did too.
Can you just address the complaint at hand?
The thing is that, okay, sorry. And I had no discussions with either Mike DeVasto or Janet Reinhardt, who I checked with before I made that announcement. In other words, it was a pretty simple thing. It's like, I'm going to resign, but I want to know if you're going to go on for 3 years, because I wouldn't have if either one of them had said, I'm not going on. And by the way, in our packet is an email exchange about that, that was covered, in the announcement part of the agenda that night. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm not sure how in any way at all this violates open meeting law.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so that email was from the following day. I think it's common for the board to thank long-serving members of any public body of the town of Wellfleet when they choose to resign. We've done it a number of times. And supplying people with information on how to or encouraging members of the public to consider running for office was not really a discussion. It was more basically an announcement that you could draw up papers for it. So let's see. John?
Yeah, through you to Helen. Helen, you had a hand, if I'm not mistaken, or correct me if I'm wrong, in crafting the current version of our town charter. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Well, I was on the Charter Review Committee for 2.5 years.
right. Well, it states pretty clearly in there the procedure for, if somebody doesn't finish their term, for calling for a special election.
So we'll be addressing that later on tonight, John.
Okay.
If we can just stay specific to the open meeting law violation complaint.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the same goes for you, Helen.
Yep.
Jude or Judith.
Okay, there I am. So I didn't recall in the recording the part where Helen asked Janet and Mike if they had taken out papers, but that in my mind is a discussion, but whatever, I didn't, Helen, please. But there are other ways to violate open meeting law. And I would say that something as important as one of our select board members at this critical point in Wellfleet, with all the problems we have, making such an announcement should have been on the agenda, or not just, public comments at the beginning of a meeting. Furthermore, she said that she resigned, but she didn't until March 29th. And you had a meeting in the meantime to clarify things. So what happened, because it wasn't on the agenda, people heard about it the next day, there was a lot of confusion. And had it been done properly, had Helen done her research before, it wouldn't have unfolded like this. And I'll try to keep to the open meeting law, but at what point in the rest of this meeting are we going to talk about, solving this problem?
The special election is later on in the agenda.
Okay, so I would just like to hear from Helen, why she didn't do that, why she felt that this was the appropriate time to make an announcement and then actually not follow up on it for 3 weeks. And in the meantime, do a lot of backroom negotiating and politicking like she loves to do. So the bottom line, though, is confusion, and she's tampered with the election on May 2nd. It's not the first time. I want to know who she spoke to exactly. Okay, so but I'll stop there. It shouldn't have been in the announcements. You both you and Charlie say that you shouldn't be talking about it like this. So what were you referring to if not violating open meeting law?
Okay. So with that, is there any other comments at this point? Okay, seeing that, Mike?
Yeah, I guess I would say that clearly this is just a waste of time.
Mike,
Yeah,
they gave a warning. So members of the
I'm
board.
just saying this is just a waste of time. I mean, there was
How
no.
is it a waste of time?
Yeah, we have to respect
How is it a waste of time?
any citizens' input. So I so just to be clear, I did say that, yeah. So with that, I'd
What I'm
like to
saying
move
is I
on.
don't believe there's an open meeting law violation.
Yeah, I don't think it meets the standard But so with that, I would just like to move on.
Sure.
And if Jude would like to take it up with the state, she is welcome to. And she can get official opinion from them as well. Public safety update, Chief Polly.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. You may recall that back in February of 2021, and it's in your packet, that the town of Wellfleet was asked to collaborate with the towns of Truro and Provincetown and participate in the emergency medical services survey, which would identify challenges, maybe some opportunities, best practices for the 3 outer Cape towns. That study resulted in the 31-page document you have in front of you. It was funded by the Cape Cod Commission. And basically, we all face some of the similar challenges with respect to providing emergency medical services. But what the study, in my view, at least clearly says, and it's in my memo to the board, Wellfleet has the Wellfleet manner or model that we've been working with over the last several years, again, through the support of the Selectboard, the FinCom, and certainly the residents, voters, is the model that is being looked at, or at least being suggested to be looked at, with the towns of Truro and Provincetown. You know, we have control of our own ambulance service, emergency medical services, overseen by the fire chief and the town administrator, and certainly the select board. And with the current arrangement in Truro and Provincetown, they utilize Lower Cape ambulance service. And there are some challenges with that. And there are some, I think, issues that both Provincetown and Truro are going to need to examine pretty quickly because I'll just say that they're challenges.
So I thought there are a number of things that I think are important for the public to know. The first is that the study shows that Wellfleet has a response time that's far exceeds, or I don't know the best way to word that. The response time is extremely low, which is a good thing. I mean, every minute in different medical situations has a very significant impact on the outcome of them. So I think it's really admirable that Wellfleet has a response time that's as low as was identified in the study, which was, what was the response time, Chief?
This is a standard called for through a number of organizations that oversee both at the state level, at the national level, peer groups, that 90% of the time of all the responses, Wellfleet ambulance personnel were on scene in 5 minutes. And that exceeds, that is much to our credit, when the average response time and on scene time, and even in bigger communities, but more dense populated, could be as much as 9 to 10 minutes. So we're basically given credit for response times that you'll see in large city departments based upon the staffing model that we utilize now. There was also, if I can, Mr. Chair, there was also the mention of the revenues that we receive through the ambulance receipts that come right back to the town of Wellfleet through billing of insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. In both cases, with the town of Provincetown and Truro, those receipts do not go back to those particular communities. They go to Lower Cape Ambulance Service as part of their contract with both of those towns.
All right. And I think it's also great that it identifies Wellfleet as the model that would be best suited to, or for Truro and Provincetown to pursue in the long term. So in this, Wellfleet is kind of a model for the Outer Cape on how to provide emergency medical services and to have a really low response time, which is hugely significant. So, are there any comments at this point? Okay, so thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members.
All right, so public hearings. So at this time, I open the public hearing on grant license number 792, licensee ARC. I supplied a memo that's included in the packet as to what we kind of have to do. So with the election, new board members would not be able to participate in the hearing that is currently open when they are sworn in, because we've already met at least twice on this subject. So on the advice through administration by town council, to be clear, I didn't speak to town council directly. It was administration checked with them. Their recommendation is to close the current hearing and then to reopen a new hearing when the new board is sworn in. I'm recommending the date of May 24th for that hearing. Mike, are you recusing yourself?
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
I'd like to officially recuse myself.
Okay, so are there any questions by the board members? Helen?
No question, but the really good news about putting it off to May 24th is that our shellfish constable will be back. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I move to close the public hearing on grant license 792, licensee ARC.
Helen, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Janet, Michael has his hand raised, but I guess that's to say he's
Yeah,
recused himself. Okay.
Yep.
So Janet,
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, I move to advertise a new hearing to be posted on May 24th, 2022 for grant license number 792.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet,
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. I hereby open the public hearing on application dated 3/3/22 for the transfer of the shellfish grant license number 2000-4, consisting of 2.16 acres on Egg Island from Ian Rummel and Jeremy Storer to Ian Rummel, Jeremy Storer, and Alfred Pickard Jr.
Helen, second.
Pickard, sorry. I'm going
Card.
to be tripping over my words all day today. Is there any discussion? Or would any of the licensees care to address the board? Or are we ready to move? Are you comfortable moving at this point? Are there any of them on here?
Brad, well, he's on the next one.
Yeah, he's on the next one.
See the others.
I don't see the others either. All right, so I move to approve the transfer of shellfish grant license number 2000-4, consisting of 2.16 acres on Egg Island from Ian Rummel, Jeremy Storer, and to Ian Rummel, Jeremy Storer, and Alfred Pickard Jr.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet,
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0.
The
I
John-
hereby close the public hearing on the application dated 3/3/22 for the transfer of shellfish grant license 2004 or 2000-4. And I hereby open the public hearing on application dated 3/25/22 for the transfer of shellfish grant licenses 2000-1 and 2002-1 extension. Oh, did I say 2001? So Shellfish Grant licenses 2002-1 and 2002-1 extension, consisting of approximately 2.06 acres on Egg Island from Beth Kaplan to
Brad,
Brad. I told you it was going to happen. From Brad Kaplan to Brad Kaplan and Anthony Hill.
Helen second.
The hearing's open, not, it doesn't need to be seconded. So Brad, would you want to address the board at all, or are you comfortable on us moving?
If you would like me to speak, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Great. Well, I put in a written, proposal and everything. I'm not sure what information you'd like me to put in
I
there.
think all your information is good.
Great. Glad to hear it.
John?
Yeah, just a matter of personal interest. Is this Anthony Hill from the Flying Fish?
It sure is.
Great. It's nice to hear that he's going to be out there.
I think so too.
All right. So I move to approve the transfer of Shellfish Grant license numbers, Shellfish Grant licenses, number 2002-1 and 2002-1 extension, consisting of approximately 2.06 acres on Egg Island from Brad Kaplan to Brad Kaplan, oh man, and Anthony Hill.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. And I hereby close the public hearing on Shellfish Grant license, on the transfer of Shellfish Grant licenses 2002-01 and 2002-1 extension. And move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of a seasonal contract for a food truck at Newcomb Hollow with Leaside Cafe LLC. Rebecca, who is the applicant? Sorry.
Murrow, and he's on here. I just unmuted him.
All right.
Tomorrow.
Hi, Mauro. So this is a renewal of basically a contract that's been previously issued by the board in years past. Is that correct?
Yeah, by the board, by the state. Yes, that's
Yep.
correct.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Helen?
It's not a question. It's something that I was confused about and I clarified it.
Okay.
So in 2019, the town awarded a 3-year contract, which broke down to $667 a year to be paid annually, year by year, to Mr. Van Meter. And the second year of that contract was the pandemic and there was no food truck. In other words, the second year did not happen. And so in a sense, I'm not sure if we can say renewal. It's the third year of the contract, which the town agreed to. Some of us were on the board then. And I'm not quite sure how to call it this, but I would call it a continuance of Leaside Cafe's 2019 3-year contract. And the language in here would indicate that he would have to pay for 1 year $2,001, which is not the case. In other words, the breakdown for this for 3 years was $667 a year. So I think we should just change the motion a little bit if the board, understands what I just said, which I confirmed with Mr. Van Meter today, just because I was confused about it, because I remembered that it was a 3-year contract and that he wasn't there for a whole year of it. Thank you.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Yes.
So is this a new contract or continue?
No, this is one that was previous. Actually, Suzanne can talk to it.
Okay.
I really went through it very quickly, Helen, and just changed the date. I didn't read I can change whatever you need me to change in the contract.
I
Okay.
can clarify it.
Yeah, 1 second. Suzanne?
Getting there. All right, thank you very much. It is, the contracts for the vendors have traditionally been issued for 1 year for the first year for the total amount of the bid. It is at the option of the town to renew it for up to 2 more additional years at the same price for the first year as the first year of the contract.
Ah.
So it is not divided by, the 2,000 is not divided by 3, it's 2,000 and I believe $1 in this case per year, each year of the contract. So in 2020, there was no vendor permitted at Newcomb Hollow. So this is actually the second time the town has the option to renew at the same price as 2019.
Okay, Merle?
Suzanne knows her stuff. She's on it. She's on it. Alan was trying to give me a discount, but I'm not gonna let her.
May I address this, Ryan, please?
1 second. Okay, fine.
Yeah, so the reason I'm sort of jumping up and down here is, hello, we have a firmly, clearly established fee schedule. And for food trucks, and this was amended last year, it's a fresh one. I think it was in the fall of 2021. Food trucks are $600 a year. And, you know, I could, you know, we can look at it. It's under, it's on the town website.
So this is a contract that went out to bid, Helen. Suzanne?
That's what I was going to say, Ryan. Thank you.
Okay. So, John?
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have had my hand up by mistake.
Okay, so I move to approve the 2022 contract as drafted for a food truck at Newcomb Hollow with Leaside Cafe LLC.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, aye.
Mike, you can vote if you're still here.
Let me see.
Is he muted? He's probably muted.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're muted, Mike. There we
Michael,
go.
aye.
All right.
Unmute myself.
Sorry, I meant to say, come on back.
Yeah,
So,
and Ryan,
Yep.
Suzanne, thank you. I hadn't understood that from my conversation earlier with Mauro, and forgive me. Thank you.
okay.
It was my fault. It was my fault. Helen's great. It's not her fault. It wasn't her fault.
Helen's not always great, okay?
All right.
Helen's
So-
great. Judith can suck it. Helen's great.
No,
no.
hey, all right, I said that, you know, we do have standards of
I'll
decorum. so-
self-mute. I'll self-mute.
All right. NPS, so National Park Service updates, Brian Carlstrom. And probably Carol. Brian, is Lauren McKean here too?
Yeah, she is.
All right, where is she?
I got her. I unmuted her.
Got her? All right. All right, Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman and Select Board. We've discussed these previously and shared information on these in prior Select Board meetings. This is an update, and for the sustained access for town residents on Boundbrook Island Road, information in the packet is fairly self-explanatory, and essentially we're asking the town to reconsider a smaller parcel for exchange from down to significantly reduced from 0.96 to 0.6 to 0.36 acres. And that includes a little bit of a staging spot for that. But essentially, what the town was asking us to do is convey rights that we can't grant for this purpose, to raise the road for the what amounts to a driveway to sustain access for those residents. And we're asking for a two-pronged approach so that we can maintain that while raising the road to then meet the goals, and one component to all the different facets of the Herring River Restoration Project. I know this sounds confusing, and it is a little bit confusing, but essentially this is what would allow us to keep access for those three, actually two structures down at the end of that access, while keeping it within the similar fashion that we're doing with raising other roads throughout the town.
Okay. So I would say that, town council hasn't had a chance to review this yet. I don't think it would be appropriate on the part of the select board to weigh in until we have an opinion from town council on it. But are there any public comments or questions about this? Or if Lauren or Carol Ridley would care to address it as well.
I could just share my screen if you like, so that the public can see the map of the parcel, but otherwise I don't have anything to add.
Go ahead, you're all set.
Okay. Okay. I gotta find that now. We use Teams, not Zoom, so I've got, oh, there's your screen. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, I think we're almost there. Sorry, share. Okay, so here it is. I think it's a little small.
No, this.
And you can see it, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So basically the 20-foot wide way here goes across the park property to right here is where the private property begins. So the private property owners would convey the right for maintenance on the 20-foot wide way, and the Park Service would only have to agree on the sides of the way, just like similar to the roads, north and south of the line roads.
Okay, and the conveyance of the land of the maintenance would be conveyed to the town?
By the private property owner on the 20-foot wide way, and then outside it would be bundled as part of the land exchange, and it would be just 0.36 acres instead of 0.96. We originally had the whole way included, but we did look further at the deeds and decided that the property owner could convey the rights that they had to the town.
Okay. Carol Ridley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. I'm having difficulty with my video this evening, so but I did want to just put this matter in the context of the project. And as you are aware, and others may be aware, there will be an article on town meeting that addresses a number of easements that are required to accommodate the low road work, the elevation of low road segments. And the conveyance, and I just want to be clear, when we refer to the conveyance of rights here, what we're talking about is an access easement, and there is no conveyance of any fee interest in the road from any private property owner. In this instance, this is a little bit different from the other road segments that are being elevated, because there is this 20-foot deeded right of way. And as Lauren pointed out, the terms of that deeded access right to the property owner would allow them to grant the town an easement to access that 20-foot right of way. Currently, and this is a discussion topic perhaps with Jay Norton, who I see on the meeting, and others in the town, but currently the concept would be for just a temporary access easement only for construction purposes, and then when construction is over, that easement right goes away. If the board chooses to include the embankments in the land transfer, then that ownership would be in perpetuity. But the owner's rights along the 20 feet, that access right would be temporary unless the town chooses to also seek a permanent access easement for ongoing maintenance of that 20-foot right-of-way, which is the deeded right-of-way. So I hope that helped to provide a little bit further context on this.
Okay, Helen, and just be clear, please limit it to questions and not about items that we need town council review first.
I was going to point out a few simple facts. One is Bound Brook Road, which is dirt at that point, heading west to the beach, is a townway already.
Mhm.
And the topography of this short stitch of road that comes off it, it's all flat there. In other words, in terms of maintenance, the town already has to maintain that stretch of road.
No, no, it's a private way.
No, Ryan, it's actually a town road.
No, the town road's a town road, but the way to the
Yes.
person's driveway.
Oh, the driveway is, but this is a town, yep, the town road to Secret
Over
Beach.
people, that's what I just said. But what I said was, if the town decides to take over the maintenance of those 20 feet, that's the topography of it. It's not, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, John?
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, the property owners would not actually be permanently losing any property. This is just a temporary easement. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding this?
They have an easement over National Seashore parcel. And because of the increased elevation needed, they would need this section or their right of way essentially would need to be elevated to accommodate the restoration project, if that helps. Carol?
Thank you. In this instance, the owners don't actually own the underlying 20 feet. They just have the access right from the seashore. But it's similar to the other easements in that, correct, there's no taking of fee ownership. It's simply an access right.
Okay. Okay. We can see your chat, by the way. Okay. So with that, onto the access to Mill Creek water control structure for maintenance road from Chequesset Neck Road. Brian and Laurie.
There we go. Thank you. This one is, I think, a little bit more straightforward. Essentially, for access to the Chequesset, or to gain access to Mill Creek along Old Chequesset for the to rebuild the water control structure there. The Seashore needs some access across a combination of town and Wellfleet Conservation Trust lands. And it's outside of our legislative boundary. So in order to do that, it's much simpler for the town essentially just to convey us an access right across that 50-foot section. And we're talking with the Wellfleet Conservation Trust right now about how that could work, or for they're in agreement with this concept as well. But essentially, we just need access to get to the Mill Creek water control structure across a small 50 feet of town land, without going through a very onerous process for a legislative boundary adjustment, which for this small of a parcel would never gain traction anyway. So we're just asking to work with the town to have essentially maintenance access and construction access across that section, very small section of Old Chequesset, which if you're familiar with that spot, it already looks like there's some sort of a driveway or access at that location anyway. So that's what this is. And again, another one of the details for perfecting everything we need to in order to restore the Herring River and move forward with the extensive restoration project.
Okay. Are there any questions about this? Okay. So let's see, what would be the proper motion? So I move that the town of Wellfleet work with a national seashore, Cape Cod National Seashore, to allow access to Mill Creek, Mill Creek water control structure and maintenance road on Chequesset Neck Road as presented.
Ellen, second.
Okay. Yep, John?
I would only amend it to say, as it says under desired action, sustained access.
Yep. So sustained access. But Carol has her hand up, so let's go to Carol first before we move the motion, or before the motion's voted on. Carol?
Thank you. So I just want to clarify. So what is contemplated here is that the town would actually, it's not just a matter of granting access, but there's actually construction of the road, of that segment of road, which would be folded into the road, road elevation contract. So it would be part and parcel of the Herring River Restoration Project, but there actually would be sort of the construction of a segment of roadway. And I believe, still a question about the nature of that roadway, whether it would be an actual, town road with a layout or something of a different nature. And I believe that council is looking into that question. So I just want to make sure it's clear that that's part of what is contemplated here. And in order for that road segment to traverse the small triangle of Wellfleet Conservation Trust land, that's where the proposed land transfer right in that vicinity would be created, so that would all be town land, and the segment of road could be built completely on town land with the access rights to the seashore.
Okay, so we would need an agreement from the Wellfleet Conservation Trust. And I don't know, depending on how things happen, it might be necessary for a town meeting vote on yeah, because it's
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'm sorry. So as Brian mentioned, we've had some preliminary conversations with the trust. Certainly don't want to speak for them, but they understand the situation and are open to continuing a discussion about a land transfer. It's a very small amount of land, and you could just, you see the dip there, it could just be straightened out, and it would be a very small matter. And the project team is prepared to initiate the preparation of a plan that could show that transfer, but it would be helpful. We didn't want to take that step if without the, sort of support and indication that the town is willing to, this isn't a final commitment, but just the town is amenable to this approach. And then we would take the next step of developing a plan of what that transfer might actually look like and resolve the questions about the nature of the roadway. So this is sort of like an initial step to provide the indication that this is something the town is open and supportive of, and we could take those next steps to work out some of the details.
Okay, Jay Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things quick. I think if we get through this land transfer with the Wellfleet Conservation Trust and the town of Wellfleet, we could essentially treat this as a curb cut like any other, driveway entering into a roadway. And then second, I noticed in your motion that you mentioned Chiquesset Neck Road, and it should be Old Chiquesset Neck Road.
Okay, yeah. So I move to amend the motion to read Old Chiquesset Neck Road.
Second.
Second, okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, and then I move the main motion. So can we have a roll call
Second.
vote?
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Oh boy.
I know, sorry.
Uh,
Yeah. Who's got it?
So I think the motion was that I move that the town work with the National Park Service, I guess Wellfleet Conservation Trust, to address the access to Mill Creek Water Control Structure and Maintenance Road from Old Chiquesset Neck Road.
Helen, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So thank you. And
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Carol, again, sorry, I'm sorry with having my video problem. I just want to, if I might just revisit the first matter with Bound Brook Island Road, just and make one comment, and I understand your need to confer with council on that, as you stated earlier. But I do want to note that this particular matter does have some time sensitivity, because we would like to include this easement, whether it is temporary or permanent, in the or both, in the upcoming package that's going before town meeting. And so if that could be taken into consideration and your deliberations could be, take place, in the near term, that would potentially allow us to maintain that as part of the upcoming package coming to town meeting. If it's not possible, then we'll deal with it. But I just wanted to make that note.
okay, I think there would be an issue with that. So we'd have to go through the whole process to secure an easement. I don't know. That every time we've done that, it's taken quite a considerable amount of time. So, all right, on to community relations. For Spat.
Thank you, Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Sorry. For Spat to introduce the new staff. So, sorry. There's Kate. Oh.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Kate, you should be unmuted.
Yes, there we go. And my coworker Maya Ward is here as well.
Okay, Maya Ward, and I think Lisa Brown. Let's have Lisa Brown introduce you. I think that would be appropriate. So.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa. I'm one of the founders of the Oysterfest, and I'd like to introduce to you Maya Ward and Kate Moreau. They are two new staff replacing Michelle Inslee, who left us this last fall. So without any further ado, Kate and Maya.
Right.
Hi, everyone. My name's Maya Ward. I'm the new Director of Development at Wellfleet Spat. And I want to start by thanking you for giving us the time to introduce ourselves on a busy agenda. My role is to bring structure to the SPAT programming and develop new programs, and simultaneously make sure that they're aligned with our mission and that we can continue to benefit the shellfishing community in Wellfleet. As many of you may know, we're undergoing changes internally, and we've decided to focus more time and effort on year-round programs to benefit the community and the greater community of the Outer Cape. We're also moving forward with planning Oysterfest 2022, although the venue remains in question. One of the biggest areas of expansion for SPAT this year will be in the area of education and community involvement. And for this, we've hired my very talented coworker as our Director of Outreach and Education, and that's Kate.
Oh, nice transition. So, Kate? Where is she? Muted again. All right.
She's on mute, yeah.
I got her.
There we go. That would have been seamless if we were all in person and not in boxes, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm Kate. As Maya said, I am the new Director of Outreach and Education here at SPAT. I'm super grateful to be here in the wonderful town of Wellfleet. And so my primary role is to really act as a liaison between the shellfishing community and both the year-round and summer communities that exist in Wellfleet. And as Maya said, we're really working on amplifying more education surrounding our shellfishing industry, since it is such a vast portion of our community. So I'll keep mine short and sweet, but yeah, feel free to reach out via email if you ever have anything to say.
All right. Well, thank you. Are there any questions for them? All right, so we'll be hearing from them shortly. So with that, use of town property, Deirdre. Sorry.
Hi. Okay.
You're good.
What, do you have some questions or what exactly?
So can you just briefly describe what the request is?
Sorry, I was surprised. I didn't know I was
put you on the spot. I know.
called on right now. So do you have some questions for me, or what exactly do you need?
It's just good for people.
Or do you want me to talk about this?
Yeah, just briefly what your plan is here, just so that it's also so that public knows, that might not necessarily be reading our packet tonight, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm seeking use of town property, the sandy strip in the center of Mayo Beach parking lot, to use it on Thursdays from June 30th to September 1st from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for a weekly artisan market, which will be local and regional. And we're really excited to, potentially have this back. It was something that Wellfleet had for a while, and we have not had it in town for a number of years. And I'm doing this as a fundraising effort for SPAT. All the proceeds, all the profits go to SPAT.
Okay. Are there any questions? So I think it will be pretty cool.
And it is open to any artisan, again, locally or regionally.
Yeah, I think it's a great program. So I move to approve the use of Mayo Beach on Thursdays, starting June 30th, 2022, and ending on September 1st, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. To Deirdre Oranger. Sorry, I struggle. For a fee of $325, and for the area to be returned to its pre-use conditions to the satisfaction of the beach director, and with the terms and conditions specified by the beach director.
Ellen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Don, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So thank you. And then use of town property for SPAT and 2022 Wellfleet Oysterfest, or for the 2022 Wellfleet Oysterfest.
Yes, thank you. So one quick add-on I would like to say is that I did not put in the initial application that our previous permit fee or town use fee was $3,000. That was approved in 2019. And in my opinion, when looking at the, let me pull it up really quickly here, for the policy on use of town property and fees, you know, what kind of organizations meet the needs for discounts or, you know, reduction of a full fee. I believe that SPAT, in my opinion, would fall under the not-for-profit organizations formed solely to support town government operations that would qualify for reduced or no fee. In full transparency, I'm not 100% positive what the 2019 fee fell under, but I just wanted to say that right off the bat. And then just a quick summary on this town use permit.
1 second. Mike, you're recusing yourself, right?
Yes, I'd just like to recuse myself. I intend on probably submitting an application to participate in this event.
Yep. Okay. So Kate, can you continue?
Yes, definitely. So our town use property application goes from Wednesday, October 12th to Monday, October 17th, requesting the use of Bakersfield for the Wellfleet Oysterfest. A little background context, one of Maya and I's big projects this year is to really expand Oysterfest and make it a month-long celebration. So we don't rely so heavily on this one weekend of not only fundraising for our organization, but also for all the parties that are involved. So background context there, but not totally involved in this permit. So we're applying for Bakersfield for those dates listed, and we have submitted a town use permit and then also an addendum that was created after a meeting between the DPW, the Recreation Department that specifies 4 stipulations discussed among us in agreements.
Okay. And then Maya or Lisa, do you have anything to add?
Just one more add-on to what Kate was saying about the Expanded Oysterfest. The purpose of expanding it is safety, to lessen the load on the town for one weekend. We know we've had some pretty high population numbers in the past, and we would like people who aren't necessarily looking for a giant crowd to be able to enjoy parts of Oysterfest and the educational aspects that we're going to offer this year. So we're not planning a month-long giant party. We're just going to have supportive programs that hopefully lots of different kinds of people and families can enjoy.
Okay. And Lisa?
I think these two have covered it pretty well. If there are any questions or any comments from anything else, we can address them as they come up.
Okay. So before I go to you, Helen, Becky?
Yes, hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
You're good.
Okay, great. So my name is Becky Rosenberg, and I'm the other co-founder of Oysterfest and the Recreation Director. I just have a few comments and questions about this application. The Recreation Department has been an ardent supporter of Oysterfest since its inception. As I mentioned, I was a co-founder of the event, and the Rec Department has been involved every year since, sponsoring a road race among other events. Oysterfest is an important event for the community. To protect the town's substantial investment at Bakersfield, specific requests were given to SPAT to modify their proposal to minimize damage to the field. This included locating all vendors and stages to the perimeter of the field and covering the cost of displacing rec programming that might be displaced by the event. In addition, that the town policy requiring a surety bond be invoked for the event to cover any worst case scenario damages that may occur at an event of 10,000 plus attendees. These requests were explained to SPAT during 2 meetings between department heads and SPAT on the 9th of March and the 30th of March. SPAT agreed to modify their request to address these concerns. The use of town property request being voted on tonight does not include the addendum that Kate talked about, and it does not reflect the concerns that were discussed at this meeting. So I have not seen the actual addendum that addresses the concerns that we discussed. And until that's made part of this vote, I can't support the application until it's the agreed upon modifications are included in the what is being voted on tonight. The town has invested substantial amount of money in the field, and like I said, I am extremely supportive of this event. I just want to make sure that the town's investment is protected, as I said. So that's what I had to say.
Okay. Kate?
Yeah, if I could respond to that, thank you. So first, I just want to point out, and my apologies if this was confusing, but the addendum, the actual addendum was in our application. So it was page number 4, right before all the signatures. So in that addendum, Becky, we have all of the things that we discussed, minus we have declined the use of a surety bond. And the reason for that is because we take out a general liability insurance policy through Hassel-Wilkerson Insurance Agency every year. And this specific insurance policy is defined and includes damage of property up to $1 million. So we already have coverage for a majority of what a surety bond would cover. Additionally, we were not able to get the numbers in time, the appropriate numbers needed to submit to our insurance company to get a quote for a surety bond. So in terms of a budget, from our standpoint, this acts as one of our largest fundraisers annually. And as I stated, and as we all stated in a letter submitted, as we're trying to diversify this, we are unfortunately in a tight situation after 2 years without Oysterfest. So without those concrete numbers of a surety bond, we would have to decline the use of a surety bond and rely on our general liability insurance, which essentially does the same exact, holds the same exact purpose.
Okay, Becky, does that answer your question?
I actually had another question through you, Mr. Moderator. I mean,
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Here, but he's
Not
not
town meeting. I have one question for Kate and one question for Rebecca, who's, I guess, running the meeting or facilitating the meeting. So my first question for Kate is, Kate, does the SPAT insurance policy cover everything that could be damaged, fences, backstops, playground, irrigation system, fields, etc.? How long would it take to procure those funds? Is it the same length of time as a surety bond? And who decides whether the damages are deemed worthy of monetary restitution? So lots of times, I don't know, there's damage inadvertent. And again, I respect that you're going to do everything possible to make sure this doesn't happen. And I really hope that it doesn't happen. But in the case that it does happen and town property is damaged and the field is not usable for the remainder of the soccer season, which will be right in the middle of during this time, how long would a surety bond, to my understanding, the funds can be procured right away to fix it. So the town wouldn't have to lay out any funding to fix the field. Do you know how long it would take can you answer the questions about the insurance policy and how long that would take? And would we need to potentially keep folks off that field while it's being fixed if it does get damaged, if we have rain, if it's not playable? How long would it take for the insurance to cover the cost?
So Becky, to answer your first question, and I may ask for clarification for your other questions, but for your first question, yes, to quote our insurance agent, our general liability insurance, if a golf cart ran into a fence and completely knocked the fence down, our general liability insurance would cover that. So in terms of the equipment and the recreation area, our insurance covers that. To answer your other question about length of time it would take to fix these things, if a fence did get knocked down, you know, I think that would be in combination with the Department of Public Works. And in our addendum, we state that decisions of, you know, field repair, that would all be made between SPAT, DPW, and the Recreation Department. So in terms of, and Maya or Lisa, if you want to jump in here, in terms of your question, and actually, not Deirdre, my apologies, Becky, if you could clarify really quickly, your question was, what is the length of time we would have access to our insurance money? Is that the question, as opposed to a surety bond?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
My question is that, like, your application is for the Wednesday before Oysterfest until the Tuesday after. And we have soccer practices and games 7 days a week during that time. So if the field needs repair, how long after the festival would the funds be available where the children can get back on the field to play soccer?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may respond to that.
Go ahead.
So that our general liability policy is annual, so it's all year round, from what I understand. And in terms of the length of time it would take to fix the field, stated in the addendum, that would be discussed between DPW, which we've had conversations with them previously, and they stated that they're pretty confident it would not be out of use for the rest of the soccer season. And additionally, I just lost my train of thought, but the costs and field repair would be discussed between DPW and SPAT and Recreation.
May I chime in here for a moment?
Maya?
Becky or Chair, in either case, if a performance or a surety bond was called in, or if an insurance claim was made, an adjuster would come out to evaluate the damage and investigate it in either scenario. So I imagine the amount of time would be similar, unless our insurance company for some reason didn't think the claim was valid, which we've used this company for many years and they've always been wonderful, and I don't foresee that being a problem.
Okay. Becky, do you have anything else?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. My other question was for Rebecca. And I didn't see the actual addendum in the packet that was being voted on tonight. So I never actually saw the final version of this, the addendum that addresses the concerns. Could you possibly pull it up within the agenda and show me where it's located, Rebecca?
The only thing I put in the packet was what was given to me. So what you have is what I have.
Okay, so can somebody from SPAT show me within the agenda that was given to the application that was submitted, where the addendum addressing the concerns of the rec department are within that you just talked about, Kate?
Is that in the application to use town property, Kate?
Yes, it should
Okay.
be page number 4.
So page 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I don't know. Can I share the screen, Rebecca?
All you.
All right. I don't like doing it because it makes seeing everybody so much harder. All right. So this is the application for the use of town property. The that we have. So tell me where, so this is the first page, right, that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Second,
Mhm.
it says DPW will, is this considered part of the the addendum? The Department Works will, maintenance and repair post-fest.
No, the addendum, it's titled addendum.
Okay, so,
Hmm.
yeah, we have that, and then we have applicant is responsible for obtaining all, and that's, let's see.
So I think that this was the original application that we submitted a while back when we were going to present in front of the select board a few months ago at this point, but I submitted one this Friday that was an edited application with an addendum, and there was no map attached.
Okay.
I can share my screen if that's helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Rebecca, can you let her share the screen, or? do I
Yep,
have to?
she's good to go.
All right.
Great. Okay.
Kate, did you by any chance send that to me?
I sent it to, I can pull up my email really quickly.
I only asked because I would have put it in if I had seen it.
Let me see. I can check after. Okay, let's see.
No
Yeah, I'll
worries.
double
If you
check
didn't,
after.
can you just send it to me so I can send it to everybody?
Definitely, yes.
Thank you.
So this is page number 4. This is the addendum. And so basically described above, this should be added, described any town services requested. So these are the 4 that were agreed upon. And then the last one, number 4, highlights the decline of the surety bond and explains our general liability insurance.
Okay. Becky, do you have questions still? You're muted.
Unmuted. Am I unmuted?
Now you're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. So just to repeat, this is the first time that I'm actually seeing this addendum that addressed the concerns. I didn't realize that they were not gonna go forward with the bond. But Kate explained that, but the bullet point number 2 or 3 actually, where it says SPAT will pay for relocation following the Oysterfest, and it's going to be determined by the cost determined by the DPW. I had asked them to put that the cost be determined by the rec department and the DPW, because I'm not sure Jay is as familiar with our scheduling as I would be for that. So that was the only thing I see that, and like I said, this is the first time that I'm seeing this document.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to try to get to the board. So Helen?
Yeah, tell me when we're ready to discuss fees, because in addition to what Katie, if I may call you that, said, we have 2 ways in which SPAT might qualify as a not-for-profit organization, which it is. And it's also, in addition to what Katie read off, it's a not-for-profit organization formed to support a specific segment of the community or region, as opposed to directly supporting town operations. And in that case would pay a larger fee than not-for-profits, which directly support town government. Now, at times, if I'm not mistaken.
So before we start discussing fee, can we just first address the application before us?
Well, the fee is going to be in it, but okay, I'm sorry to, jump ahead.
Okay. Did you have any questions regarding the application?
No, it's all clear to me at this
Okay.
point.
John?
Yeah. Is there admission going to be charged for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Because this raises a question with the use of that property as regards what's sometimes referred to as the Baker mandate. We're not referring to the governor, but to Lorenzo Dow Baker, that operation, anything that takes place on that deeded land not be charged to the public.
That's for Mayo Beach.
Is that only strictly for Mayo Beach?
I believe so, because the rec department charges for the use of various facilities. on
Okay.
Bakersfield.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
So this is just me. I prefer it being in the center of town. I think there's a larger benefit to the town that way, and to the businesses around the center of town. I also think that you would run into less of these issues regarding maintenance or potential damages to a grass field if it was in the center of town like it's traditionally been. If the admission is limited to 5,000 a day, that's fewer than has traditionally been admitted. So I don't see a huge need for it to be outside of the center of town. I mean, because normally it handles, in normal times before everything, you would have like 10,000 people in a day in the center of town. And I just think, in that, and it keeps it as a, kind of a small town vibe. But that's just me.
If I may,
Yes.
we had extensive meetings about this issue in particular, and it seems like staffing, it would be a big strain on police and fire, even if SPAT hired our own security company, which we are more than willing to do. It did not seem like that was an option for police and fire moving forward this year. But we would like to have the fest uptown eventually. And if there is still a way for it to be uptown this year that we don't know about, we're open to discussing that as well. But Bakersfield was our plan B.
Okay. John?
Yeah, one concern that just occurred to me too is during the season, having lots of people descend down there for Oysterfest every week. Seems to me it stands to exacerbate the already difficult parking issues.
The Oysterfest is just for a weekend. The SPAT is having events throughout a month, but the Oysterfest itself is during a week.
Oh, I see. Okay. I got them mixed up. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess is Chief Pauly and Chief Hurley on? Still.
Yep, we're both on.
All right. Can you discuss some of your concerns about having it uptown or in the downtown as opposed to Bakersfield?
Not exactly sure where to start here. Back in December, we began the initial talks about the fest for 2022, and it was really a shift down to Bakersfield after this past previous year to try it down there, and planning started heading in that direction. And as we started looking at the manpower needed for the event, costs, location, it really seemed like it was becoming a viable option for this year with so much uncertainty between town staffing, COVID, and et cetera, along with the fact that, uptown, there are still some things we have still not resolved from 2019 that we were working steadily on. But at this point, at mid-April, even back when gears were changing a month ago, to try to move this thing back uptown this year, right now I can run this event down at Bakersfield with half the staff that would be needed uptown. And one of the things I explained to SPAT, and I'll explain it to the board and the public this evening, Oysterfest is not the only thing I need to worry about during that 3-day weekend. I mean, it is bringing a huge draw back to town. And in previous years, we have got caught off guard staffing with the amount of call volume that occurs during that weekend. So, you know, I'm going to be 3 people short, 6 part-timers short, and I'm not going to probably have other communities coming to help us. So to staff this event uptown this year is a concern for me. So I thought Bakersfield, let's get this event back on track again. Let's hold it for 2022. And myself and the fire chief, we're very upfront and honest that we also would like to see this move back uptown again. It was just this year with so many uncertainties and staffing issues. You know, and the other thing too, we talk about a capped audience. I'll tell you one thing right now, and depending on the popularity of this event coming back, I would be very concerned turning thousands of people away uptown versus down at Bakersfield, where we have the area and the real estate to deal with a potential crowd showing up thinking it's not ticketed, they can get in, they can find a way to get in. So, I mean, this has been vetted for months. We've had numerous meetings. You know, this was to me, a compromise to hold the event for this year, successfully, mind you, and deal with all the other issues that we're currently addressing.
Okay, Chief Polly.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm also on a Truro Select Board meeting as they're reviewing the regional EMS report that we talked about earlier. I'll just reiterate what Chief Hurley said. Right now, we're averaging 1 or 2 people in multiple fire academy classes from last November up to the end of May, and then we'll be having more people going to fire academy classes starting in September. Those are 10-week commitments because we've had turnover in the department. We've not been able to hire certified firefighters right off the bat. We've been training them to be firefighters through State Fire Academy, paramedics, EMTs. I just don't have the resources to handle the downtown event this year. It's just not doable. I totally support bringing it back to Main Street someday soon, because I think it's vital to the community. I think it's a win for the community. But as Chief Hurley said, we've got to have a little bit more time to plan for this, make sure we have the right number of resources to staff this from a public safety standpoint. But I am looking forward to bringing it back to Main Street, hopefully next year, but there's just not enough time this year. Thank you.
Okay. And then Suzanne Thomas, are there any issues that you see or regarding the Mayo Beach area?
Sorry, I had a problem with my mute button. No, I don't see any problems because the foot race, the shuck and run location has been moved away from starting at Mayo Beach so that we don't have that competition anymore. And also having it confined at Bakersfield, I think is going to make the monitoring of the activities much easier for a reduced number of people.
Would the town be able to charge for parking for the event at Mayo Beach Field or Mayo Beach parking lot?
I don't see why not. However, in previous years, that has been reserved for handicap parking. So I think people have come to anticipate that.
For the fest?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there's a limited number of handicap parking indicated on this application. It doesn't include all the spots, but it would make sense to have handicap parking there. It does provide.
At least part of it. I'm not advocating for the entire area to be, but a large number of spots, I think it would be totally appropriate, because we're not talking necessarily people who need wheelchair parking, but people with limited mobility.
Yeah,
and
I'm well aware. So.
Yeah. Okay. Just singing my song for my people. Sorry.
I mean, you're talking to the wrong person for that. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't mean that.
Talking to the right person.
I've experienced that situation. So, Maya and then John.
I just wanted to add a couple of things as we discuss this, that we wanted to thank and demonstrate our support for police and fires. They've been so supportive, helping us figure out a very complicated situation. And also REC for taking the time to go through this with us. And we value the rec programs and we have no desire to displace the children or damage the field. And we, SPAT, as an organization, have always made it our goal, and successfully, to leave things better than we found it when the fest has been held uptown. We've always made sure to repair things, sometimes even out of pocket. So we just want to make sure that we're going forward with the understanding that we mean to maintain that same level of integrity that we've shown.
Okay. John?
Yeah, parking at Mayo Beach was just mentioned. I didn't think that we were allowed to charge for parking there.
Suzanne? Sorry.
We're not.
Suzanne?
The original deed gift from the Baker family for the area was that it should be reserved for people to recreate. It's always been interpreted as not permitting parking, paid parking there. So we have never required beach stickers. However, it doesn't apply to the newly created parking lot that runs parallel to Kendrick Ave, and which we're referring to at this point. I don't think it would be against the grant for a one-day event for the select board to permit paid parking to happen there, to raise money for the town, as long as it wasn't sustained in terms of people using it as a bathing beach.
I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what town council had to say about that, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, you know, I think charging for parking there, whether we can do it within the restrictions of that deed, which I do have a copy of. Let's remember the way it's going to play out. Main Street is going to be freed up. All the businesses.
Get out of there.
Hello? All the businesses there will be able to be accessed directly. And people are going to park all over the downtown area, not just down at the marina or at Mayo Beach, obviously. And it's going to, having it down at Baker Field will mean that the whole town gets to benefit from this in a way that it doesn't when it's on Main Street. Because, you know, the rest, I mean, it's very hard to access what's on Main Street when you have everything else going on up there. So in addition to the safety issues, I have to say that I feel that the intelligent weighing of safety and, you know, practicality over having this be enormously profitable is a good one. And there are other municipalities on the Outer Cape that haven't done that and suffered. So I think this is a good plan for this year. Thank you.
Okay, so I know that the marina has traditionally charged for parking for Oysterfest as well. But we'll see. But the I don't know. So I guess I would approve the use of, so we'll discuss the fee separately. But I move to approve the use of Bakersfield and the facilities there too for the 2022 Wellfleet Oysterfest from, shoot, what was the date?
October 12th.
Yeah, from what time on October 12th? What do you guys need, Kate or Maya?
Early in the morning, I would say we would start setting up, maybe 8 a.m.
Let's just say 7. So from 7 a.m. on October 12th, 2022 to, I guess, 8 p.m. October 17th, 2022. And for all areas used to be returned to the pre-festival conditions to satisfaction of the DPW director, the beach director, and the recreation director And for the terms and conditions in the addendum be applied thereto with the following amendment that what was it, the third bullet point include, in addition to the DPW director, the recreation department director.
Good.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
Don, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, where's Mike?
He's recused.
Recused.
Oh, oops, right, sorry.
In terms of a fee, yeah, it's smaller than it, 5,000 people is smaller than it's usually. I don't know. I almost would feel more comfortable, even though he's probably going to kick me, is to have Charlie negotiate a fee. That might be appropriate. Charlie, would that be something that you'd be willing to do?
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. Of course, it'd be a pleasure to help the board. Yep.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, Ryan,
Yep.
I'm sure Charlie would do a good job, but we know what they paid last time, 3,000. We know that it's going to be a little less trouble, but still quite a bit of trouble. We know that they're going to be paying, you know, for the police detail and the, you know, fire department detail for ambulances and so forth. And I've, you know, been doing this for a while, these spat, you know, votes, and why can't we vote on it? I mean, why is
Our
it?
job, yeah.
I mean, I think that we should keep it at 3,000, not reduce it and not make it more.
Okay, Janet?
So I would agree. I was going to say, I don't see the need to reduce it when it's 5 days, 6 days or so. I also, I'm in full support of SPAT doing this. I don't know how 5,000 is going to be controlled because people are going to hear about it. They're all going to drive into Wellfleet, into town, and they're going to end up driving down to the harbor. And, you know, the best hope is like 5,000 that might be going in, but there's going to be more people in town that are going to want to turn around and possibly use the restaurants and other businesses there, you know, maybe even all the other beaches. So I'm for keeping the same fee. And I also want to know why you aren't hiring a private security group when I think you always have.
Kate?
Yeah, thank you. So one, Janet, thank you for bringing that first point up because that is something that we've discussed in length. And so with, you know, 2 years without Oysterfest, SPAT right now, we kind of have full reins over how we portray this message to the general public via social media, email messages. So we plan to be very explicit and clear that this is a ticketed event. And if you do not have a ticket, you will not be admitted into Bakersfield for Oysterfest. So that's kind of the first point in mitigating that issue. And the second point, could you repeat that? I forgot what you said.
Why not hire a private security firm?
Yeah, so we still plan on hiring a private security firm. Chief Hurley has vetted and Chief Pauly have vetted some that we have not used in the past, which I believe. So we still plan on using a security company as well.
And I do, I hear what you're saying. Again, I'm in full support of this. I just think, I'm sure the fire and police are going to be expecting this too, but there are people, even if it's a ticketed event, you know, people are still going to come into Wellfleet. I mean, 2 years ago, it was advertised on the news, not even advertised, but it was mentioned on the news as I was driving that, you know, Oysterfest this week. So I think you do have to be prepared for the whole town to be busier. I don't know, who knows how much, but that's not just all going to be Bakersfield, there's going to be people coming in and out. So, yeah, be prepared.
John?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, in this case, we're going to be paying, or they're going to be paying for police details for a week instead of for a weekend. So I'd
Yeah,
like to know
they do every year,
for the whole week?
No,
5 days or whatever.
No, the
No?
last,
no.
no, always been over the course of a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, there's no need for a police detail unless you're moving, have impacts on roadways.
Right, but what I'd like to know is how much more are they going to be paying for a police detail this time around than they have in the past?
The police detail is billed. Chief Hurley? It's
I
billed.
thank you, Mr. Yep,
not
so I
part of
thank
the
you.
fee, So,
Yeah, some of the confusion may be, John, that the application itself, some of the earlier days before the weekend is for setup and getting ready for the event, and then Monday is the tear down of the event. So unless there's any interruption to traffic or something, we do not provide any police services, just the actual event itself. If that helps clarify that at all.
Right, but my understanding is that this particular Oyster Fest is going to be for a longer period of time, unless I'm reading this entirely wrong.
No, their request for use of town property, the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday prior is set up for the event. They may have gallery events and other smaller venues throughout the month, but this will be the meat of what we need public safety for, will be
In
that
other
area.
words, it's the same.
Yep.
The details are going to be the same as previously.
Yep, yep.
Same amount of time. The other question I had, my recollection is, first of all, how much is that? I mean, it's got to be more this time than it has been in the past. Everything's more expensive.
can you talk about how the police details are billed, Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we bill directly to vendors or companies that use us. And to be honest, is part of what I was just stating earlier. More than likely, this event is going to need half of the public safety staff that we've used uptown. Number one, for the mere fact that we're in a more contained area, we're not shutting down the central district and re-trafficking people around the area. The only wild card that I am concerned about, which again was one reason to move it off Main Street this year, would be turning people around that are going to be showing up that do not have a ticket for the event. And to be honest, I'd rather use the real estate that's down at Mayo Beach, Bakersfield, to deal with that versus Main Street, Bank Street area uptown. So we do bill them direct. They do pay. The only thing that we do absorb ourselves is due to the extra activity that will be around that 2 to 3 day period. I do put on extra staff because there are events and things happening off festival hours that do increase activity in town. So that is paid for out of my budget.
Is there a hard and fast figure that they get billed, or does it depend on?
It's by a man hour.
Yep, it'll be by a staffing plan and using a security company that we have vetted that is much more professional, much better trained, that I will see along with the fire chief what areas we can deploy the security personnel to kind of lessen that up for us and let us deal with more concentrated areas where a law enforcement presence is needed.
Okay, so we don't have a hard and fast figure at this point.
No.
The reason I'm asking all these questions is because, we're going to be charging them.
Yeah, John, one second. So the police department bills for time used.
So we don't know what that is.
So like if one person's down there for 6 hours and another person's down there for 6 hours, they bill for 12.
Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
but we don't know what that's going to be, I guess, ahead of time.
No, it's totally based on how much time they spend down there.
Okay. Well, and the last question I have has to do with the security company, because my recollection is that 3 years ago, we had a security company hired that didn't show up.
Yeah, and that's why after that event, myself with Michelle Inslee and the fire chief, we vetted 3 different companies that have done events at the Melody tents, both on Cape, off Cape. They've done events in larger festivals and fairs. Unfortunately, the group that was used before was a rough group. You know, they weren't very professional, they weren't well trained, but they came cheap. And the message sent to SPAT, which they received very well and we're on board with, that we are going to have to pay for better trained and better staff security, which they are.
Okay, John, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I believe it does. Thank you.
Okay, Maya?
Thank you. I just want to point out that SPAT is going to great lengths to restart the Oysterfest to the benefit of the community and the town businesses. And we are doing it in a way that lightens the load on everyone involved. And it's going to be far less of a fundraiser for us than it usually is. And we are coming up on this after 2 years of a pandemic with only a very small virtual fest each year. So I would strongly hope that the town would consider this when discussing our fee.
Okay. So I actually think there's more of a disruption at Bakersfield than the center of town. I mean, not during the festival hours itself, but outside of the hours of the festival. Has, you know, if rec programs have to be relocated, I know it's in the addendum, but you know, that is a disruption that is possible with this location. That is, that wouldn't be an issue if it was on, you know, in the center of town where you have a hard surface. You know, you're not going to be having the same issues with, you know, with the condition of the field afterwards. But I don't know. So yeah, I guess so. Janet, Helen, and John, where are you on the fee?
I think keep it the same. I mean, it's a lot of activity and, you know, I don't know, keep it the same.
Okay, Helen?
I said what I, thought before, and I don't want to make it higher, which might be reasonable, because a lot of other costs have gone up. But we need to remember that SPAT has, I've disrespectfully referred to SPAT as a cash cow, because SPAT has helped this town so much for so many years. And it isn't that we don't appreciate that. And we realize that we may not be getting the kind of contributions that the town has benefited from if you were making less money. But, everything after this pandemic chapter that we're just coming out of, we may be going into a new one. It's like a pilot program almost, even though we've done SPAT before. And let's see how it goes down there. It'll be smaller, and I think 3,000 would cover it in my mind. Thank you.
So I actually would.
I'll answer the question in one sentence. I feel that since the festival is going to be smaller with smaller attendance, they should be charged less.
Yeah. So I would actually recommend a fee of $1,000. They actually worked with the shellfish department with matching grants at the beginning of the sorry, at the beginning of the COVID and the severe disruption it caused in shellfish, and they aided the town in the buyback program, where I don't know. Lisa, how about can you talk about the programs that you had at the beginning of the pandemic to benefit, or Maya, to the benefit of both the town and the, yeah.
Can we unmute Lisa Brown?
Yep, I'm trying.
I did. She should be able to unmute.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, hi, thank you very much. I don't have the figures directly in front of me. I think probably Maya does, but I do know that we've given a significant amount of money into several programs, particularly during COVID. We saw the need and we jumped at it, and we didn't empty our coffers, but we substantially lessened them, that's for sure. Maya, do you have those numbers, or Kate, do you have those numbers right at hand?
Kate.
Yes,
Thanks.
I do. And they were included in the letter that we initially submitted as well too. But so to date, we've given over $750,000 back into community programs, mostly through 4 categories. The first was community grant awards, which included the Wellfleet Elementary School Audubon Program, the Norovirus Relief Fund, the Wellfleet Elementary School Cafeteria No Plastic Initiative, benthic mapping and harbor judging, and in general, the Wellfleet Shellfish Department. Through community support, we have donated to the food share program that was created during the pandemic to provide financial assistance to the shellfishing community by buying their shellfish and donating meals to those in need. The third, the Fisherman Relief Fund, which included our partnership with the Lower Cape Outreach, which provided financial assistance to the Wellfleet shellfishing families throughout the pandemic. And lastly, number 4 is the Nauset High School Scholarship Program, which we have donated $87,500 to date. And up to 2 recipients are awarded each year, and they receive $10,000 for their college experience. So that is mostly over the past 5 years, but the $250,000 was, extended for the past 5 years.
So I would say that, I don't know, as I said, I think $1,000 would be appropriate and allow SPAT to get themselves back on their feet. And then we can go from there. But Helen or Maya? Maya has her hand up first.
I'll meet you halfway. 2,000. Thank you.
That's not halfway.
Well, meeting in the middle.
So, Janet?
Again, SPAT's wonderful. You've done great things. The town loves it. The state loves it. Tourists love it. I don't think of this as a donation fee. I think of this as a user fee. And it really does, the town is a charity too in many ways, and it really does take up a lot of resources in town, puts a lot of people out. A lot of people do make money from it. There's a lot of cleanup. Sometimes there's damage. And I just think that SPAT's going to make way more than $3,000 from this. And so are the people. If that's what they paid 2 years ago. I mean, we've talked about getting our fees going. And then every time somebody has to pay a fee, this present board often reduces it. So I don't think 3,000 is a big deal. So I could be wrong, but I'm still for 3,000.
Okay, Lisa?
Well, I respectfully would just like to answer Janet. We pay the DPW, we pay the fire, we pay the police, we pay for every single thing that happens during that entire time. As far as who benefits, absolutely the town benefits, and all the people who hang out their own shingles that weekend benefit, and the town charges for fees for parking, and we pay all the buses and all the transport. We pay for all the insurance. The fest, cost, over $100,000 to put on, really. So when you're considering all the fees and everything, we pay a lot. And the return on that is not as high as you'd think. So I just wanted to clear that up, that we actually pay for everything. The town doesn't really pay for the DPW to do their thing and for, we pay for all that.
Okay, John, and then I'm gonna make a motion because we need to get going here. John?
Yeah, I think $1,000 isn't enough. I would, lean at least towards the $2,000 figure.
Okay. So I think that would be what the compromise is. So I move that the fee for the 2022 Wellfleet Oysterfest for the use of town property be $2,000.
Ellen second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Okay. So on to business request for a temporary tent structure at Max Shack at 91 Commercial Street. Charlie or Mac Hay?
Hi, Ryan, it's Charlie. I was, while we were going through that, I was taking a look at the message from ABCC. And I think when Mac originally sent the letter in back in January, we didn't quite know what the rules of the road were going to be. But if you really take a look at the authorization that was approved and signed by the governor, it says patio and outdoor expansions licenses that have been approved for expanded patio and outdoor services may continue their outdoor operations until April 1st, 2023. So I think Mac's here, but I'm wondering if we even need to act on his letter.
Mac?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is, a bit of a moving landscape here, but with the governor's recent extension of the essentially what amounted to the emergency order that started in 2020, he granted this, signed into law the extension of what we're actually asking for. So I guess I'm a little bit confused in myself what we need to do, but I'm hoping by coming before you, we have your approval, or if we don't need your approval, at least you're aware that we want to continue doing exactly what we've done the last 2 years. I do understand, of course, that the tent itself needs to go to the building inspector to be permitted, as well as DPW and police and fire. They've weighed in on it, and I think everybody's on board. It's exactly what we've done the last 2 years.
Okay, so I would actually prefer to make a motion just to cover it.
Yep.
Sure.
So I move to approve the temporary tent structure at Max Shack at 91 Commercial Street as presented.
What? Second.
Yep. Oh, Mike, sorry.
I just need to get unmuted, that's all.
Yep. Okay. Can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good night. So town meeting venue. Town moderator, Danny.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there has been some discussion back and forth about where and when town meetings should be. I think at this point, the select board has settled on June 11th as the primary date for town meeting. The only question at this point is whether to have it indoors or outdoors. I had some discussion with our health agent, Hillary, and with Chief Pauly, and their consensus was that out of an abundance of caution, they're recommending holding town meeting outdoors. My personal preference, which may or may not be relevant, would be to have it indoors only because of the logistics of it. But I'm not sure how the board feels, but given that it looks like the numbers for COVID aren't really going down and we may be looking at another surge based on what's happening in Great Britain right now and what's happening throughout the Northeast. We want to make sure that people are comfortable attending town meetings, so we have as much participation as possible. So I guess reluctantly, I would recommend that we set the date of town meeting to be held outdoors Saturday, June 11th, starting at 10 in the morning.
Okay. Charlie, so in the previous the previous town meetings that have been outdoors, the one drawback has been the lack of ability to present, I would say. We're reliant on handouts of a pretty limited scope. And I just think with everything that the voters might want to address, we might want to try to figure out some way to present outside.
It might not matter. So what I did was,
That's Mac, I think.
Yep, I got him.
There you
All right. So is that something that the contractor that we've hired to provide media services could assist with?
Well, I can check with JP and with our Ludwig and our vendor to see if there's some way we can enhance the visual presentation.
Yeah, because that would be because that would be extremely helpful, I think.
Yeah, we have a planning meeting. Maybe Danny can correct. Is that tomorrow, Danny?
Yeah, I believe so. Rebecca.
Yeah.
You just muted yourself.
So we have a planning meeting tomorrow, so we can include that as one of the conversation points.
Yes, sorry, Danny, I muted you by accident. I was trying to unmute myself. We do have a planning meeting tomorrow.
We did look into this for the first town meeting that we held outdoors, and I did a fair amount of research on that. And the consensus from all of the folks I talked to with a lot more expertise than I was that any kind of a projection system was going to be completely washed out and really wouldn't be adequate for people to be able to see it. Even people up close, just because you need such a bright screen. The only realistic way to do it is with LED, the kind of LED screens that are used at concert venues, and Boston Symphony uses them out of Tanglewood, things like that. And those are phenomenally expensive to rent. We did look into that for the first meeting. So I'm afraid to say I don't think. I mean, JP may know more about this than I. JB, I'm sorry, I haven't met him yet. But my guess is that trying to do something that would really work is going to be prohibitively expensive, and I'm talking, many tens of thousands of dollars, not a couple of thousand.
Yeah, I would just check with JP and see if, I don't know, maybe he has equipment already that might be able to be used. His contract's covered under the the PG Access Fund. So that doesn't, which can only be used for very specific purposes. And this is one of them. So Helen?
Yeah, so I've been going to town meeting in Wellfleet for a really long time, way before we had those big, versions. We'd have the warrant article up there, and sometimes we have other information on it. And I think a lot of people do not look at those PowerPoint things up on the screens. There are two of them. If you look at people's heads turning or not, I think people look at handouts. Some of them read the warrant for the first time at town meeting. But I gotta say, most of the town meetings I've ever been to in my life have not had that kind of technology, and they've gone just fine. And I think people read it more accurately if they're looking at something that's right there in their hands on their lap. Thank you. I don't
Yeah.
think it's worth the expense.
Well, it might be covered, but I just think it would be, I mean, voters are gonna have questions, regarding, it's an unusual town meeting, because of, we kind of have to give a report on the town's financial, position, and that's where it could be really helpful. But John?
Yeah, I would say that barring the ability to set up a video apparatus like this, and barring an unexpected spike in COVID out here, I think we should do it indoors for that very reason. This is a crucial town meeting in that we do have to present exactly what you said we have to present. And people deserve to see this. And I think it's time we made this move, unless there's a really compelling reason not to.
Okay, Mike?
I guess I'm not totally sure what we should do at this point. You know, on one hand, I think that the outdoor town meeting was a huge success. We had 2 of them, and we're having it in June. The weather's usually good.
Not always.
But it's not always good. But during the day outside, I think I prefer it, but you know, the weather dependency makes me question whether we should hold it outside, and we really need to plan. We can't just plan for it to be outside and move it inside, right? If the weather's bad, I don't know.
No, not really. But we did set weather days for the town meeting.
Right.
But
I mean,
that still counts on, you know, one of those 4 days being decent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it lends itself to amount of space and comfort outside that I don't think that the gym typically has for long durations of time in those bleachers. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, I don't think there's a perfect solution, but I guess my preference would be to do what police and fire chief also suggest and hold it outside. That would be my preference, but I could be swayed.
Okay, so I think we kind of have to decide tonight. Is that correct, Danny? So that you guys have enough time to plan.
I mean, the crucial thing is lining up a tent. And I think Jay's already been in touch with the tent companies. He could weigh in here, but that's trying to get a tent. And I think we do need a tent to shelter people from sun more than rain. We can't, if we try to put everybody under the tent, we might as well move indoors. I mean, yeah, there's a little more airflow outside, but you'd be having to put people pretty close together. The sound, I think we've already got the sound lined up, but those are the crucial things that need to be lined up. That in terms of legally advertising where the town is going to have town meeting, you can hold off on that. The problem is the logistics of what we need to rent and line up to have the meeting outside. That has to happen pretty soon. Whether we can have a contract that could be canceled or have contingencies if we decide to move indoors. If I could just address the concerns about projections. I have to agree with Helen on this. What's going to answer the voters' questions are the way the select board makes the presentation to them. The visuals, I think, have very little to do with people's understanding of what the bookkeeping issues are, what the deficit issues are, what the long-term structural financial issues are. Those are things that the select board needs to be prepared to explain to the voters in very clear terminology. And the best graphics in the world are not going to do that, I'm afraid. I think the select board needs to be on their game. And you know that I think you know Mr. Sumner and Ms. Soubet and Ms. have done a phenomenal amount of work, and I trust their ability to explain to the voters, you what's going on, but ultimately it comes down to the select board. And again, I think graphics have a lot less to do with it than explaining in very clear terms why we're where we're at and what we're going to do to get out of it.
Okay, so, 1 second, I had to look at the dates. So, June 11th.
I believe we said June 11th,
Yep.
Saturday, June 11th, with
The 12th.
I think, Danny, when we post the warrant, we're gonna have to put the location, so that'll be the
correct.
critical, yeah.
So I move that Wellfleet holds its annual town meeting at the not the Bakersfield, the elementary school ball field. Starting at 10 a.m. On June 11th with weather dates of June 12th, 18th, and 19th.
Ellen second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John and I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right, thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
And then special election for vacated select board seat.
Jennifer's
Charlie.
on, just give her a second.
Oh, Jennifer's on, okay.
I'm on. Can you hear
You're
me?
good to go, Jennifer.
Well, I think Ryan had this on. I was just going to be on to answer any questions.
Helen?
Yeah, John had very legitimate concerns about what happened with this. And yes, I was on the Charter Review Committee and even looked up that section again when I realized that I was going to have to resign. And it seemed to me, and it seemed when we were going through it as a committee, if I remember correctly, that it applied to situations where in the middle of somebody's term, nowhere near any annual election, for example. Hold on, I'm addressing what happened and John had a concern, and please let me finish. It won't take long. I thought that it applied to that kind of situation when in fact, according to state law, and Dale Donovan, who I spoke with about something else, said, hey, Helen, you've got to know that it has to happen anytime somebody leaves without fulfilling their term. Sure enough, and Jennifer did this, and I also contacted the, Secretary of State's office and talked to a really smart guy who was really clear about it. That had to happen. And there's a very sort of strict protocol for the numbers of days. I just thought I was being convenient so that there wouldn't have to be a special election. I've been waiting. I had like 2.5 weeks to make up my mind about this after I got new information about my health. So the point is, that's what happened. The minute I heard that it was something that had to happen in a different way than just me handing in a resignation, which is what committee people do to the select board or to Danny when he's the appointing authority, I got on it and didn't know whether or not I was going to actually be stepping off the board until 2 viable candidates stepped forward and said, we are going to be write-ins. So I understand why people were confused. I was confused. And so were some other very smart people, but it's been fixed now. And the position that I'm vacating will be voted on, a 2-year position at the special town election, as it should be under state law. Thank you.
So that's not specific to state law. State law determines a certain number of days that has to be elapsed. Other town charters include provisions that say that it goes to a special election unless the vacancy occurs within a certain set number of days from the annual election. Additionally, some other charters, it's allowable, is that, you know, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go too far down there. But anyways, yes, so we have to hold a special election. There has to be a certain number of days afforded to the public to pull papers. And then there has to be a certain number of days between when they pull papers and when they can return them. And then from there to when the election can happen. So John?
Yeah, I have just a quick sideline here. The person who originally raised this issue at the beginning of the meeting has been X'd out of the meeting apparently, and has not been able to rejoin, and has not been given a reason.
No, she's rejoined once or twice. I don't know what the issue is.
I've been getting several messages that indicate that she hasn't been able to.
I mean, she
John,
should
that
be
was
able
my
to.
fault. I accidentally removed her when I was just trying to put her picture out. That was my fault. It wasn't intentional.
Okay. Anyway, getting back to the charter, it seems pretty clear in section 313 that there has to be a special election. I don't know why there's any mystery about this.
Yeah. So I don't. So with that, I'd move to accept the resignation, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we have to do that.
Yeah.
I actually have an issue with this, but I don't want to bring it up. So I move to hold a special election on June 21st, 2022, to fill the 2-year term of the vacated seat of vacated by Helen Miranda Wilson.
Helen second.
Okay. Kind of a roll call vote. John,
Janet,
you have
aye.
your hand up? Sorry.
No, it didn't take it down, although I would like to hear what your concerns were, but.
Yeah, we'll see if they're valid or not. I don't want to go down that road if they're not. So, but yeah, so kind of a roll call vote.
Excuse me, Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael,
Brian,
aye.
aye. Sorry. Helen?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I could, yeah, I can vote for this. Yes, Helen, I. And may I supply one more piece of information?
Go ahead.
So when I spoke to Mr. Will Rosenberg at the in the elections division of the Secretary of State's department, he told me exactly what to do. And that's what I've done by handing in the resignation. He told me when to date it, the fact that the select board should receive it formally. And you see, it's quite different than when a committee member just stops being on a board or committee or commission or whatever. And that was the thing that I didn't understand, as well as the fact that I thought we should have that language, Ryan, that you described in our charter. Okay, I don't like bad process, and this was disturbing to me that it happened that way. And the minute I understood that, I got on it. Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
No, not really, but I would like to express some regret on my part for not getting to the conclusion that we did end up getting to earlier in the process. I kind of approached the election from two different points of view, where I have a lot of business and logistic things that go on behind the scenes, like ballot creation, tally sheets, things like that. And I was kind of more focused on that at the time, and that I was on some of the other procedures. So I do understand that some of the write-in candidates eagerness to go forward with their campaign, and I impeded that process. So I do regret that, and I apologize.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. With that, we'll move on. Charlie?
Okay.
And actually, before you go, just so you're aware, I'm gonna ask the board if we can drop the last item of on our business agenda, which is the code of conduct, considering the hour. Is that okay with the rest of the board?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So Charlie, FY23 budget.
Okay, thanks, everybody. I'll try to be sort of efficient about this. I had originally wrote a memo on March 10th that I amended on March 5th, 2022 and put in your package. And really what I was trying to do with this, by the way, I had worked with several of the department heads on this project, and I appreciate their, time and guidance and assistance on this project. So I didn't do it in a vacuum. But anyway, in my mind, if you really take a look at the financial forecast, we currently have a operational budget deficit of about $504,000, and that's going to change a little bit over the next few days, but it's still in the approximate amount of $500,000. But more significantly, when you take the warrant and you add up all of the items that are in there for equipment and special projects, that totals $1,409,700. So, we would need an override for both those sums, $500,000 and $1,400,000. And so i.e. close to $2 million. And I just felt that that number didn't seem reasonable to me. And so I worked with the department heads to take a look at the spending plan. And so in that memo that I amended on April 5th, I sort of broke the warrant down into a number of different categories. And what I've recommended in this is that we take a number of the items that are in that first column that are identified as delete or reduce, and that we delete all of those items off the draft 2022 annual town meeting warrant. So we're reducing spending. And then in the second column, those are items that I feel are important. I'm going to make one change in a moment. Those are items that are important and we think have to go to the 2022 annual town meeting warrant. And therefore, those would be subject to an override. Right now, I have that listed at, the override would go from $1,410,000 down to $552,700. So we're reducing spending. And then the third column, I've taken some of those items and said, you know what? If we have free cash certified for the annual town meeting, and if we have money that's reasonable in terms of its availability of funds, I'd fund some of those items out of free cash. That's that total of $210,000. And then the last column, I've basically said, those are items that I'd fund out of other available funds. They might be appropriations that were made and never used, or special revenue accounts. But anyway, those items would be just funded through other available funds. Now, the only change that I wanted to make based about from when I put this in your package is item number 10H, Route 6 Main Street project, $30,000. I think I'd also recommend that we pull that off the warrant, and I'll use state chapter 90 funds to pay for that. But if you approve the plan that I presented to you, Essentially, I would amend the warrant to reflect that whatever your final vote is. But if you follow the recommendations that I made, it would take the override down for capital special projects from $1,410,000 to $522,700. So, I'm thinking, and then if you look at the operational override of $500,000, we've essentially cut the override request in half. Anyway, now there's another part of my memo that I'll talk about separately, but I think I'd ask you to discuss. I'll answer any questions that you might have and ask you to make a decision on that first part of my memo.
Okay, I have a couple. That's for the havoc. Okay. The marina, where is it? Where is it? The marina study?
Oh, your number 20, Article 23? No, Article.
Yeah, 23 on here, Harbor Marina feasibility study.
Yeah.
We did not insert that, and we deleted it from the budget previously.
Okay, good, thank you.
That we wanted the Marina Advisory Committee to kind of like lay the groundwork before expending funds on a consultant.
Okay, so that should be out anyway.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'll note that.
Okay, and then I think we reduced the funding to OPEB kind of with an understanding it was a 1-year reduction.
Yeah.
And I would like to try to restore that funding and put the town on a stable footing going forward in terms of the OPEB funding. But that's just me. Mike?
Yeah, so Charlie, do we have any estimation of what free cash will be at this point, or are we still waiting for
Yeah, it would be
the finalized?
It would be inappropriate for me to give
Right.
you a number.
Okay, fair enough.
I do believe we're gonna have, if we can get to the finish line, I'll talk about that some other time. But I do believe we'll have some free cash monies available.
Okay, so just as a point, what we have been doing is using that free cash money to basically bridge our operating budget deficits and fund things through the free cash and one-time revenues that we've had left over a lot. And it's not a good idea to do that. And so I think it's important for the voters to understand that, like, when this free cash comes available, that we're not doing the irresponsible thing and just sort of putting a Band-Aid on our overall budget structural issue that we have, and we're actually addressing the structure of the budget. So when we're moving forward, we have money to put into capital items in reserve that need to be paid for, and we shouldn't be relying on debt exclusions like short-term borrowing to pay for those things. So just, to anyone who's listening, I think the process here is that we could wind up with a substantial amount of free cash and sort of put a Band-Aid on our budget, not have the overrides or potentially a very small override, but leave ourselves in a weaker fiscal standing than we need to be and we need to move towards. So I think what Charlie's doing here is really try and hone in on how do we get a stable foundation for the budget, and that free cash can be used to appropriate to things in the future as it comes up, but not a means to sort of obfuscate the fact that municipal government has grown over 2.5% per year, and our tax levy hasn't kept up with that. So, we just keep sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And in the end, we wind up doing short-term borrowing to make up for it. And that's just no way to run the budget. So I appreciate all the work, Charlie. And I think communicating this it's going to be the difficult thing to do. But I think once we have free cash certified, at least we can say that there is this, cash available, and we intend to use it, to stop doing these short-term borrowing articles.
Yeah, Ryan, if I could on Mike's, points, he explained it better than I did. I'm kind of tired, but yeah, I think, I'm trying to do a structural repair to your foundation of your budget. And, and I will say, remember, we're lucky this year. The school costs all around, if they're not level, they're down. So otherwise, this would have been much worse. But I do think that it's going to put you in a really good place going forward. And I would say from a policy standpoint, whatever the town, if the town approves of the second override for capital and special projects, the board, from a policy perspective, should reserve those monies for future capital costs. And then I think you'll really be in a better place. And then you can augment some of those things with free cash when you have a solid free cash certification balance.
Helen?
Yeah, what you said, Charlie, yes. The last thing you said. About the OPEB expense, which I've had my brain on for a long time. I think reducing it would make sense. Deleting it would not. So I'm sort of halfway to you, Ryan. I think that we should always be putting something in there. And the other thing that may seem like a frill to you, but I was subjected to very kind of minute discussion of this in other groups, is to try to see if somebody can get a grant, sort of, nudge the NRIB for the harbor flora and fauna study. And here's why. Climate change and all the things it's bringing, ocean acidification, so on and so forth, is going to affect us. And in these situations, we need some kind of baseline. And there hasn't been anything really since the Curley report many, many years ago. And I think it's time to do it again, but that we should try to get money from a federal agency, from a state agency to do it. So I agree to having it taken off, but it really needs to happen, and it's time sensitive. Thank
I don't
you.
think that's what we took off, Mr. Chair. Is that what you're referring to? What we...
No, but it's and Charlie's, what they're recommending is to delay that study. Is that correct, Charlie?
Yeah, so that if you look at that, Article 18 is the harbor flora and fauna study. I'm saying keep that on the warrant, but we're only going to fund it if we have a reasonable free cash certification, because I do think that's important.
Yeah,
so
but
that's sort of a secondary funding category.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, let's try to get grant money from whatever source before we take it out of free cash. It needs to happen, but to put some focus on fundraising for that. Thank you, because the money's out there.
Well, and maybe what you're telling me is you don't want me to have that on the warrant for the June, that will try to, you want us to try to get some grant funding for that. So maybe that's one of the ones that you don't take my recommendation off. Don't leave it on the warrant, that you pull it off and maybe put it on for the fall.
Yes, but in the meantime, tell the NRAB and whoever else, we've got to see if we can get money somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair to the NRAB. We've kicked this article down 2 different town meetings. Eventually we have to move on it. If free cash is available to fund it, let's fund it, and they can apply for grant funding and reduce the amount of the overall ask for free cash. But I just think we just need to stop kicking cans.
Okay, fair enough. They may find some matching thing or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in terms of free cash, how it's usually used in municipalities is funding one-time expenses, capital items, studies
Yeah,
of that nature. And so, I mean, and those articles otherwise would require funding by a vote to raise and appropriate or have some sort of debt exclusion. So using free cash for that it reduces the overall cost to the taxpayer. But I mean, the bottom line is still the same, just the funding is slightly different and you're not paying interest.
yeah.
So I guess, so where's the board on the OPEB funding? That's the only question, I guess, with this funding plan. John?
On the which funding?
OPEB. So he's proposed, Charlie's proposed. Actually, so normally Wellfleet funds OPEB at $200,000 per year. And that's and has for a number of years. And that's like outstanding or other post-employment benefits is what it stands for. It's outstanding liabilities on the town, borne on the part of the town, and funding OPEB builds up a trust fund to offset those expenses essentially. Last year because of the circumstance we were in, and we removed OPEB funding from that year's warrant and budget, with the expectation that it was kind of like a 1-year thing. It was outside of our normal practice, which is actually one thing that Wellfleet had been doing well, is funding OPEB. And Charlie has proposed, at least for this year, rather than funding it at $200,000, to fund it at 50. If that kind of makes sense. I'm more in favor of funding it fully, and just having the town on a stable financial footing. But I don't know.
I agree.
Okay.
One idea, just as an alternative, by the way, your OPEB fund balance is pretty powerful. I mean, you have done a good job for a small community. So I think that's worth noting. I think you have like 2.3 or $2.4 million in your OPEB fund. So that's something you should be proud of. One idea is maybe make it 100 on the override and then 100 if you have some money in free cash. Maybe that's a alternative you could consider.
Okay, Mike?
Well, I think I agree here with Charlie. I think we have a really solid footing in our OPEB fund, and OPEB is something that goes by the wayside in a lot of places. You see it all over the place where, budgets get tight, and that's like the first thing to get defunded because you don't have to pay it right now. So everybody pushes it off. I agree with you, Ryan, that we need to continue to fund it at a high level. It's obvious, but given the current financial circumstance and the fact that we have a high OPEB balance, I think, this seems like a reasonable thing to do in order to, make the transition to having a solid financial foundation going forward, because this is a transition. This is we're changing the way that the town has been running its budget, and we've been running into these issues where, Prop 2.5 and the cost, inflation and rising wages and pensions and salaries doesn't stop at town hall door, but our levy is fixed. And so during this transition, I think it makes a lot of sense to say, look, we're strong right here. Let's just put a smaller amount in OPEB this year. We've always funded it good. We'll restore that the following year. But, you know, it's a way for us to transition without causing, you know, more tax increase at the moment, at least until we have a clear picture of our total financial standing. You know, what we have right now, this makes a lot of sense. And we'll know when we have free cash, and maybe we can even make up for it in the following year. But I think it's really, we need to focus on really transitioning here and reducing the burden on this year's warrant and on our tax bill overall as much as we can. So I kind of like the way it is right now. We're still putting some money into it, but and we have a strong position.
John?
Yeah, for you, maybe to Charlie, what happens if we don't fully fund it this year? What are the consequences?
None. So, you know, if I'm going to use me as an example. You know, I had a 40-year career in local government, and I retired from the town of Brewster. I get a pension, but the town pays for half of my spouse's healthcare costs. That's one of the contractual obligations that the communities make to their retirees. So the OPEB is funding future costs, that liability. You know, I'm going to live until I'm 85, I don't know, whatever, 90. So there's a liability the town has for me. Same thing with your retirees. So it's recognizing that future cost. So you're in good shape. It's not going to hurt you in any way. But you want to get back to the $200,000. It's a question of how rapidly do you do that?
Okay, Danny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking as another retiree who's interested in the OPEB, I think what John was suggesting might be a good way to go forward. We are certainly going to have a town meeting in the fall. We will have a much better idea of where we are fiscally in terms of free cash. I think the most important thing is that the select board propose a budget that town meeting voters are willing to support. Because if not, we're going to have to come back and do town meeting all over again. So my recommendation, if it were up to me, I would say go with Charlie's recommendation. He has a lot more experience in this certainly than I do. You have a chance to take another bite at the apple in the fall. If free cash is in really good shape, there's no reason that we can't add to that OPEB fund through free cash or even, you know, some other mechanism in the fall. I think that would be the prudent thing to do at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my issue is that if it's not included, it means more than likely that the town is going to have to ask for another override sooner than it otherwise might, which is going to be a tough sell as well. If we, you know, and it puts the next town administrator.
Are you saying if we don't fund it fully, or if we do?
If we don't fund it fully, you know, eventually we have to get it back up to 200,000 a year. So if we don't fund it fully in this year's budget, you know, Charlie's kind of proposed to phase it in over 4 years. But that does mean that, you know, by not including it in the budget, that we're going to have to ask for an override sooner than when we otherwise would. Helen and then John.
Yeah, and this is a little bit oblique, but there are people who apply for jobs here who might want very much to know that we had a better than usual OPEB fund. And what's a little unclear to me right now is, so we're looking at two things. Should it be bumped to the fall town meeting? That's one issue. And the other is, how much should we ask for this fund this year? So I don't think we should do 200,000 this year, but Charlie, what's your, let's say we do it in the, let's say we have it on the warrant in the fall, right? So it'll be put off a little bit, but not forever. Are you saying that 150,000 would be what you would be thinking of as reasonable?
Well, no, I was suggesting that we get back to $200,000 over 4 years. This year 50, next year 100, the following year 150, and the year after that 200. But hearing the conversation amongst the board, I think I was getting a feeling that you weren't satisfied with that plan. So what I was saying is you could go for 100 grand in June, and then if free cash is powerful, you could ask for another 100 grand at the fall special town meeting. If you wanted to get back to your 200 quicker.
I was saying, like, why don't we do 150,000 in the fall and skip it on this town meeting?
Yep. I would still ask for 50 though.
John?
Yeah, given the fact that, first of all, overrides are going to become more expensive as time goes on, as interest rates continue to rise. I would be in favor of Charlie's suggestion on this. You know, let's get this get this ball rolling sooner rather than later. If I had to choose between that and, say, funding the NRAB study, I don't think I'd have any difficulty making my choice.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I just think that Charlie wouldn't have suggested if we weren't in a position with our OPEB fund to do this. And, you know, I think my preference would be to go with the plan of increasing it each year, unless we have more cash on hand than we expect in our financial forecasts, in which we can move money into OPEB. And I think, John, you meant debt exclusions when you were talking about the interest rates. But yeah, we don't want to take debt exclusions. But funding OPEB, these are a liability that we have to pay no matter what, right? But also, if somebody doesn't, like, you know, not to be morbid, but live up until the point where their liability is, that money remains in the OPEB. So it's you know, we have to make sure that it's adequately funded. But from what I'm hearing from Charlie is that we are pretty adequately funded right now. And I think the plan is sound to take, to move it up every year in a financial forecast. And then if there's extra cash, then we can apply it to OPEB.
Charlie, do you know what the current outstanding OPEB liabilities are?
Well, I don't. I don't. I suspect it's in the, you know, I'm just judging from Brewster, my experience in Brewster. You're probably, you know, probably like $10 million is probably your gross liability. So,
yeah.
But I can find out.
So
it's in the audit. I just forgot to look.
Yeah, I mean, so it is gonna, I mean, I'll go along with the board, but it is gonna create a tight budget situation for the next 4 years or more by not including it in the funding for this year.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Well, why is that? I mean, what's our yearly liability that we pay out actually in OPEB?
Charlie?
You're not paying anything out of there. You're accumulating funds for a future cost.
Right, but some people are retired, so.
Yeah, so you do have retiree costs. Those are already built into your operating budget.
So basically, you know, we have to get it back up to funding it fully at 200,000.
Yeah.
By basically stepping the increase over time, it does lessen it on a 1-year basis. But so like next year, there's going to be, you know, at the bottom line balance, an additional 50,000 taken out. And next year is 100,000 over what is budgeted for in this year's budget. The following year is 150,000 over what's budgeted in this year's annual budget. And that creates a pressure because at the same time we have other costs that are increasing. We all know that, healthcare, general liability, employee benefits, employee pay at the same time is also having a pressure of increasing faster than the levy. So when you add another increasing cost that increases, faster than the levy on top of that, it does put pressure on the overall budget, and will reduce the availability of free cash. At the same time, we also have, which we'll get into it probably next meeting, the Water Enterprise Fund has a higher subsidy from the general fund to it currently, which again puts more pressure on the budget. But I'll go along with the board for right now. It's just the next town administrator is going to have to be, it's going to be tricky. So
Yes.
okay, so John.
How would we go about finding out how much is in it?
I'll put that in my next report.
Okay.
I have it. I should have brought it with me tonight. I didn't.
Okay.
So sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll find out, but it's like $2.3 million.
All right, so I guess we'll just move on with this because we really do need to.
Now,
and
I
we'll
guess
just go
I'm
with
asking the board, would you vote to support this so that I can go in and modify the warrant to reflect this?
Yes, so I move to adopt the spending plan as presented by the town administrator with the following exception: to delete the what was it? The marina feasibility study from the plan.
In the 6A Main Street project for 30 grand.
And the 6A Main Street project to be moved to other available funds. Would that be right?
I'm going to use Chapter 90 funds for that.
Okay.
State monies.
Okay, so do we just delete that entirely?
Yeah, they'll pull that right off the warrant.
Okay, and to delete the which number was it?
Well, that was 10H.
10H, and
Yeah.
to delete 10H. Is there a second?
Second, Helen second.
John, you have your hand up?
Well, yeah, are we voting just to delete 10H or also the feasibility study?
Both.
Okay. Well, we're not voting on the OPEB expense yet, right?
We're accepting the town administrator's funding plan. So that would be the 50,000 as included.
And then, of course, all of those items that I have in my reduce delete column would be pulled off the warrant by this vote.
Okay. John, is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Now do you have any issues with that?
I do.
Okay.
But I'm not willing to delay this any further. I'll just vote how I feel.
Okay. All right. Can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, nay.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Yes. So
Ryan, the only other thing I'd ask, I know it's late, but I'm trying to, I will tell you, we're getting to a point where I really need to get this warrant and the budget finished up. So that's why I'm sort of pressing this a little bit. But the other thing is, on the second part of my memo, page 3, I had worked with a few folks, Rebecca Ruffley, Dan Silverman, and myself, and we took a look at the warrant and we said, okay, we have 66 articles, I think, in the warrant. Is that too big for one town meeting? And so we looked at this to say, these are items that we would suggest that you might be able to delay till the fall town meeting. Now, some of them you've already taken off the warrant just by your previous vote. But there's others on here that we're recommending be delayed until the fall.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready to go through those. So the previous vote, that was Article 4, those changes will be reflective of.
Yeah,
Okay, so that simplifies it, because otherwise, oh, yeah, no, it says presented, that's right, so that's good. All right, so on the annual town warrant, so I guess we're keeping the Wellfleet Harbor Flora and Fauna survey. So that will remain. And then 24 Harbor Marina feasibility study is deleted.
yeah.
Okay, and then so and the transfer station feasibility study, is that delayed or deleted?
That one I had in my deleted column anyway.
Okay, so I think we need to make some motions. So I move to so the Harbor Marina feasibility study, we didn't vote to insert, so I don't need to make a motion on that.
Right.
I move to reconsider article in the current, I don't know. I move to reconsider the transfer station feasibility study. Is there a second?
To reconsider it?
Yeah, we have to reconsider it so that we can pull it out of this warrant.
Oh, right, sorry.
Second.
Okay. Kind of roll call vote.
Michael, I. Anybody else?
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Yeah, Janet, I.
John, did you vote?
Not yet.
John, I.
Okay. I move to delete the transfer station feasibility study from the 2022 annual town meeting warrant.
Ellen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, no.
Which was this one? I'm sorry, I'm losing track a little.
Article 25, this is in Charlie's to delete column, the transfer station feasibility study.
Oh, that's article, that's 24, it looks like.
No, 25.
Can we move this to fall for now? Deleting it off?
He recommended deleting it.
You're deleting it from this warrant.
Yeah.
When you meet this summer, you'll have a whole new warrant.
Sure. Okay, Michael, I.
I'm looking at 25 says Adult Learning Center.
No,
building.
that's 26.
Yeah.
Well, how did,
All right, so Mr. Chair,
I'm just using the actual name of the article and not the actual number.
Okay.
So you don't, that's one of the reasons why. So,
All right.
Janet,
I'll change my vote because if we can consider the transfer station article in the fall, that would be fine with me. So I'll change my vote to yay.
okay, so I think I'll just start making different motion then. So I move to insert the transfer station feasibility study into the fall special town meeting warrant.
Second,
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
and Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay.
Um,
The adult community center. So I move to reconsider the adult community center addition feasibility study.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, I move to what, Helen?
Yeah, can't we just do this for all of them? Please?
No, but because we voted to insert a number of them.
Okay.
Or, okay, I mean, I can move a number of them all at once if that's what you guys want.
Yeah, because we're going to move them. to fall or not, there's going to be a whole new
Okay.
warrant.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of them is important to show that they're not being, that we're still acting on them essentially.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion? Can we just remove them from the annual town meeting to the fall town meeting?
Yeah, so let me try this. So I'll just move a bunch at once. So I move to reconsider. So I think we'll have to do is, I move to reconsider the Adult Community Center Edition feasibility study, climate action reserve fund, the town code adoption of renumbering of general bylaws, town code adoption of renumbering of zoning bylaws, lease of town property, animal control bylaw amendment, adoption of enabling legislation for disposition of unclaimed property, wildlife protection bylaw, affordable lots zoning bylaw amendment, accessory dwelling unit bylaw amendment, amendment to the zoning bylaws cottage colony, amendment to the zoning bylaws. Oh, actually, that one's general bylaw amendment for natural resources advisory. Yeah, for Natural Resource Advisory Committee, and to delete them from the annual or 2022 annual town meeting warrant and to insert them into the fall special town meeting warrant.
Ellen, second.
Okay, kind of roll call vote.
Ann and I.
Don, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, and then there's two that I guess weren't identified. I don't know. I mean, we haven't voted to insert the zoning bylaw contractor's yard submitted by the planning board. We haven't even reviewed that yet. I think if we're moving the other zoning bylaws to the fall, it would make sense to be in the fall, but we haven't even voted to insert it at this point. And yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I think maybe we need to just take that up and decide if we want to insert it in the spring or the fall. At some point, do we need to do this?
No, we don't. I mean, we can take no action, but I mean, we're basically gonna pretty much close the warrant except for citizen petitions. If we're doing the other zoning bylaws in the fall, it makes sense to do it in the fall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just can't remember if there's something hinging on it, and maybe that's just me not.
And yeah, and I need one more meeting before you close the warrant because there's a couple of issues brewing, so.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yep.
So, as one of the special advocates for the ADU zoning bylaw that needed some housekeeping tweaks, is that being bumped too? Because that wasn't a substantial new thing.
Yeah, all those got moved to, we just moved that one to the special town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Basically, the annual town meeting warrant is focused on spending.
Okay.
And budgets for the town.
Just to clarify, so I can tell the other people who worked on it. Thank you.
And then the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw amendment, does that need to be on the annual town meeting warrant?
Well, I left it on there because there was some corrections recommended by the AG. So.
Okay.
I left it on there.
All right, so let's just.
I thought they were modest.
Yeah. Is there anything else on the warrant to just either from you, Charlie, or by other members of the board?
You know what, I would like to check with like the building inspector about the contractor's yard. I don't know if that is time sensitive or what the need is.
We haven't even taken it up yet. And
Yeah, I know, but do they want us to do that or?
I don't know. The planning board has not communicated anything to at least to me or that I have possession of.
I only received that language this week. So.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay,
We just have an agenda item on it, and then if we just, maybe we can just move right off it next meeting.
maybe. We
Either
have,
that, yeah.
we'll see. I'll try to put it on. All right, with that, yeah, the last time we're skipping, so select board reports. Are there any?
April 20th.
Oh, wait, 1
20
second.
Okay.
Before you do that, Danny, I didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
No, I just very briefly, Mr. Chair, I want to thank the board for paying attention to the suggestions of the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, myself. I think this will make the town meeting a much more manageable process to the benefit of the voters and to the benefit of the town as well. So thank you for your careful consideration of this.
Okay. Thank you. Mike, sorry for cutting you off.
Oh, no, that's fine. I meant to make this as an announcement, but I took a phone call right before the second meeting started, but there's candidates night on April 20th. Meet the candidates through the Wellfleet Community Forum. So
What time?
that's what I'm just looking for right now.
I think 7, but it should be posted somewhere.
It's 7. It's 7.
Yeah, somebody emailed me, but they didn't tell me exactly what time it is. So 7 o'clock, April 20th. So I encourage anyone to come.
All right, I just wrote it down. So, any other select board reports? Okay, town administrators report, Charlie.
Oh,
Oh.
I think we've heard it.
yeah, I think I'm
Done.
I don't, yeah, is that all right if I don't think there's anything new from what I had. Oh, I can't even find it, to be honest with you.
Ryan,
Yep, Helen.
and through you to Charlie.
Oh, I found it. Okay.
Yeah, I read it, and it's in the packet. Here's the question, clarify to me, who has had so many dates in my own head about whether I'm going to be on the board or not. Are you going to serve as the TA through town meeting, I hope?
Well, I was going to talk to Ryan about that. I think there can only be one town administrator. So maybe, you'll see shortly, but the new town administrator most likely will start that Tuesday after Memorial Day.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll have to go on some type of other status.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to work with him for, up through town meeting, even if it's part-time.
Yeah, and Charlie has said that he would be willing to make an appearance.
Yeah, no, I hope you would want me to, but I want to be at town meeting just because I put the budget together and the forecast and all that kind of stuff.
So I suppose we'll be discussing that at the meeting when we discuss the new town administrators contractual.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that agenda item.
And he's on the call, or he's on the session tonight, so, I mean.
By the way, Rebecca is.
Oh, I'm glad I said something nice. Yeah.
May I just say, I commend Rebecca. She is outdoing herself with the visuals.
All right,
Thank you.
topics for future discussion.
Okay, I've got one. Hold on.
Okay,
Trying to raise my hand.
yep,
Summer is almost upon us. And the Viewpoint Association acted well last year. There was that pilot program with a new way of managing that area, Omaha Road and et cetera. And we really need to do something in response to their good faith effort, their responsiveness, and move on that, because it's going to happen again this summer.
so there's an article in the warrant right now, but I think we would have to meet at least one more time in an executive session. Would that be fair, Charlie?
Yeah, we're working on that with council. we're going to have something for the board to review very soon. And we do have a placeholder article on the warrant, and Nancy is doing all the work, Nancy Trevetta, so.
Yeah, and she'll be back beginning of May, so,
Okay, so that's my main future concern.
yeah,
Thank
keep your powder dry, so.
I don't use powder.
All right, any other topics for future discussion? Okay, new business, I don't think there is any. Correspondence and vacancy reports. Is there any that anybody would like to address? Okay, seeing none, minutes. Sorry, I need a motion. A vegetable at this point.
Yeah, I actually had another meeting earlier today, so I'm going on 5 hours, over
Yeah.
5 hours of meeting.
Sorry.
Um,
Yeah, and we had another meeting before this as well. So, do you have dinner, Janet? I'll bring you some over if you need some.
Dinner?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm never hungry.
All right.
So Ryan,
Yeah.
hello, what am I? Chopped liver? I have.
You want dinner? All right.
I have candy.
I'll bring you dinner.
Thank you.
over.
I had some candy too, Rebecca.
Yeah, what happened to the code of conduct? Did we decide not to deal with that? tonight?
Yeah, it's just, it was gonna get too late, and so we skipped it for tonight.
We're all going to Ryan's house to violate open meeting law
Yeah.
And
well, we can
eat.
discuss.
for dinner.
Yeah.
You
dinner.
guys think I want to talk about municipal stuff with any of you anymore tonight? Think again.
Okay, so I move to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2022, March 21st, 2022, March 22nd, 2022, 1 PM meeting, and March 22nd, 2022, 6 PM meeting, as printed in the packet.
Second,
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen abstain, but thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. I move to adjourn.
Ellen second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, nay. No, just kidding. John, I.
Oh,
I could.
Made me laugh out loud, literally out
Ryan,
loud.
Helen?
oh, yeah. I mean, Helen, yeah.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
I
Good
love
night,
you
all.
all. Goodbye, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.